Hello, everyone. So it seems like 2:01. We'll give a few more seconds for people to trickle in.
Mila, are you in the DC chapter? Oh yeah, I see that in the corner. Okay,
Yeah, I'm in the DC chapter.
nice.
Nice.
Terrence, where are you from?
Up in the cold, cold Boston.
Boston. Okay. Great.
It's like 10 degrees here right now.
Yeah, I'm technically Kansas City, and I've been serving there in different ways, and but I'm going to actually be transitioning and moving towards LA soon.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize, Abe, I gave you the LA
No worries.
background.
It's all good. Yes, sunny SoCal. It was kind of weird though. I'm in the La Crescenta area, and it was hailing at one point. So, I can never complain when it's 70 and 80 degrees in wintertime, and you're able to go to the beach, which is an anomaly for most people.
Yeah, perks of Southern California living. Although yesterday and maybe today is going to be a little bit of showers.
Okay.
So just really quick, people are finishing up in the big room, so they're trickling over. But also, the feedback that we got yesterday was there's good conversation going. How do you continue it? So we actually created a Google form for you to enter your information, and then what will happen is they're gonna send this out to everybody that wants to share their contact. We don't want to send out the attendees list because some people don't want their information out there. So if you want your information out there, you want to get connected to the speakers, just feel free to fill out the form, and then we'll send out the total package once that's all ready.
Thank you, Gianni.
I'll share this thing on my screen. This was Malibu Beach. So we do suffer in California. For some of you guys that might not realize it, it was full of hail and even in the coastline. It's kind of interesting weather we've been having. Believe it or not, it was like 90 degrees a week and a half ago too. So some of you from Colorado, I think, are here, and I went to Colorado once. I landed, it was 28 degrees and snowing and 5 feet of snow. And 3 days later, it was 85 degrees and hot. Made for a very interesting suitcase to pack.
It's interesting to see snow in the beach like that.
Yeah. It looked like white sand, but it wasn't.
It's good to see your faces. Thank you for turning on your video. I see Helen, Christopher, Ben's back, Chen. Awesome. Thank you. It really helps us to see your facial expressions. If you resonate with things, or show us disgust if we say something off, like it's good to see engagement that way. It allows us to see if it's tracking with you or not. And so we would love for you also to lean into the chat rooms. We're going to ask some questions, so definitely blow it up there, ask questions, and we'll try to surface as much as possible. And if we do miss it, we have a lovely team as well that will continue to curate all those questions, and we will try to answer at the very end. And so that's our commitment to you guys.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I think we can start. I think we've got sufficient people in the room. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's good afternoon, good morning, wherever that you're joining us from. My name is Mila Duchon. I'm the VP of External Affairs with NARTC. Thank you everyone for joining us. We have an amazing session lined up for you. This is a 45-minute session. We will be dedicating 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A at the end. I will give a prompt 5 minutes kind of prompt before when it's time for the Q&A session. And we welcome you to ask any questions in the chat. And I'd like to introduce the speakers for today. We have two phenomenal speakers, Abraham Jin and Jim Lee, who will be touching on the topic of how to become a multiplying leader. A little bit about Abraham. Abraham is currently CEO of Jin Consulting Group, serving his clients' business strategy, culture, leadership, and digital marketing, and is the co-founder of Bespoke. He's also a Giant TV speaker and consultant at Giant Worldwide, a global leadership firm. He serves in his community as the founder of LinkedIn Local KC. His vast experience has led him to coach and train leaders from companies like Google, Tesla, T-Mobile, and many others. Our next speaker is Jim Lee. Jim Lee's leadership experience emerged from traditional large corporate top-down management. During his 11 years working for several Fortune 10 telecommunications companies, he strove to bring out the best in his teams through empowerment and organizational health. He has helped start many companies, nonprofits, and business units, and moved into consulting so that now everyone can be successful with his help. Currently, Jim enjoys multiplying positive team culture and changing the way people lead using Bespoke as a platform for leadership transformation. Welcome, Abraham and Jim. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Wow, what a great introduction. I love hearing it from different accents once in a while because it sounds so different and I feel like I'm under.
I want her to do my voiceover.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much everybody for joining. Today's session is to just kind of give you a different perspective when it comes to leadership. We tend to see a lot of times where a lot of us are having to wear multiple hats. We don't have enough people and enough hands really to kind of do the things that we're looking to do. And if you find these challenges of really having an effective team, then this is the right place for you. We just want to show you how to possibly work with other people and give you an opportunity to kind of set yourself up for some success. And we want you to do is as you go into this year and you have maybe either a new team below you, or you're just all a new team, to take a look at what you're doing and help you to be more realistic with what you can do, as well as have a more opportunity with your team to really enjoy the process. I don't think it's all about just getting events and work done, but it's really about being together with your team and having a great time. Life's too short to be slaving away and really creating something that might be a little too hard. And when Abraham and I look like the first team that we're trying to multiply our strategies into, Abe's got a big challenge. He's got 4 kids, 4 boys that he's trying to do. I only got 1 girl. Hopefully I'll have more. But when we look at the strategies that we're implementing and we're sharing with you today, honestly, it's the little things that I do. Whether it's I'm trying to teach my little daughter how to use chopsticks, right? It's not about getting the food in her mouth. It's about her having a positive experience about chopsticks and allowing her to be able to learn on her own time. It's me and my partner trying to make sure that our family is healthy, and the values that we live by are well. But when we scale this out into ERG clients, Abraham, what are some things that they've been able to learn through some of these tips and tricks that we're teaching today?
Well, I think one of the things that most ERG leaders are facing is they're always thinking about volunteers, engagement, and future leadership, right? It's a hard task that you have to run this thing on top of your job and your role, right? And if you don't know how to position people in the right place, in the place of their gift mix, guess what? Burnout engagement is going to be hard, right? And we need to make sure as leaders to position people in the right place where that actually gives them life and energy, and also need to think through a leadership pipeline. Because if you're not actually growing your people to be upskilled for this task, they're not going to be able to have the right resources to actually continue to sustain the leadership and the culture within an organization. A lot of times, most ERGs tend to have a hodgepodge of leaders in a process without a consistent mindset toolkit and language. And as a result, it doesn't really create a true multiplying effect. And our hope is to really help roadmap and co-create with leaders around them to build something unique for their leadership culture.
Yeah, and we want this to be about you, right? So we're trying to multiply this into you. It's not going to be so successful because we don't have more than 40 minutes to do this. But if you could help us with that challenge and asking questions along the way, be active, share where you are. You might find some people that you might not realize are just next door from each other. And our hope is that you can communicate with us as we go along. And here's our first question for you as you're trying to understand your leadership challenges. Abraham, what do we want to hear from them right now?
You know, a big part as we think about multiplying our leadership is delegation pains, right? You've all delegated something and it's all fallen through, or someone just totally just skimps out, or they just don't want to engage altogether, or it becomes a one-person show, right? And we don't want that, but I'd love to hear from you right now. Share your name, your role in NAP, and love to hear kind of some of your delegation pains, leadership challenges as you try to build out a team.
And I'll go ahead and place it on the delegation pain board here, but looking for like a few examples of what are some pains that you have come across trying to work with other people and as a leader, delegate some of the things that you want others to do. All right, Susan, thanks for the first one. Establishing trust.
Good. Transparency, says Mila.
Transparency.
Onboarding, says King.
Ooh, onboarding.
Marinka says giving people the space to fail. You're right, that's a huge one. And I think sometimes Asian culture doesn't allow that sometimes because of fear of failure, right?
Yeah.
Helen says accountability and timely responses. The follow-up of communication and accountability is always sometimes hard to have, right? Especially in a nonprofit situation, right? It's not this, you don't have the incentive to fire them or, you know, not give them better pay, better communication, the support and resources to actually accomplish their tasks.
Yeah. You know, as I'm hearing this, you know, I remember my management days when I didn't want to be a manager because I felt like I wanted to be everybody's friends and get along and be a team. But then when push comes to shove to get things done, I felt like, you know, we all had to kick somebody's butt at some point to make sure that things were getting done, right?
Yeah. Brian
like
says aligned expectations is sometimes hard.
Yep.
Having the right fit with the right, you know, project of people. Sometimes hard to get that. Getting good feedback in light of the projects that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Feedback. Oh, nice.
Oh, Ginny says something like not having the task feel like a chore, but a shared goal. Like how is this something that could really, how can you give a project that actually they're motivated to doing?
Yeah. If you look at these, Abraham, I feel like, you know, these are common things. You know, I think some people are sharing some, but I would say this is all not felt by one. And one of the things that we say as a leadership tool is these realities that we face, whether we know it or not, are things that we could actually control. It's just that as leaders, we tend to be blind to some of the things that we do. And if you were with us in the previous session, you'll see this tool. It'll be very familiar. And what it is understanding that this reality that we have, and I'm sorry, I picked the wrong color to put this on here, is these realities of transparency, having trouble with onboarding, getting space to fail, accountability. These are all realities that we have, and they're consequences of just being in leadership. Because leaders tend to have a certain mindset. We all tend to have a certain type of, you know, what do you say, goal in mind, where we joined because we want to see something happen. And that vision that we're trying to do is not really easily to transform and transfer to other people. And so what we want you to see is there are these tendencies and patterns that you might be blind to that we want to point out as you are a leader and minimize frustration. Sometimes you're a leader and someone say, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And you give them the task and they do it totally wrong, right? Some of that is space to fail. Some of that might be right expectations. It's giving them the resources. It's commitment levels. And so those are the conversations that we want to help you to address. And as we look at the things that we're trying to make you do is be a multiplying leader. It's not about you doing everything, but when it comes to delegation, how can you engage other people to do things? And so Abraham, what are some of the tendencies that we're going to try to help them to see as becoming better and effective multiplying leaders?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at some of these frameworks of multiplying our leadership tools and allowing us to kind of audit ourselves of what are our gaps and why our mindset, our toolkits, or even the way that we actually see our philosophy of delegation could be having gaps within it. And if we can actually take ownership of our tendencies, our hope is that we can be able to have a clear path of what we need to change. Because if we're not seeing this issue and pointing the fingers at other people, then what's going to happen is that we're not going to see any change. Again, I said this in the last workshop, we have to take ownership of our leadership gaps. And the best person to change the situation is yourself, because you can have ownership of yourself. And that's the easiest, most empowering framework that you can actually go through. If you're always saying, oh, delegation pain will only change if they change, guess what? Your narrative may not change at all. And so our hope is really, what does it look like to take some of these tools, see your mindset, your frameworks of how you develop people, and see what the gaps are in your tendencies. Our hope is that you'll take greater ownership of that, and you're going to feel more empowered to make the right choices moving forward.
Absolutely. And all these things that are happening, we like to say is, that's the danger of innovation. If we as leaders don't take this information we want to pass down to other people and do it in a strategic way of what we call imitation, then what happens is you're sharing thoughts and ideas and visualizations, and your biases are gonna see one thing, and somebody else's natural biases are gonna see something else. And so if you don't take the time to demonstrate and calibrate how you see things, then what happens is there's a danger of innovation to occur. And what you shared are all the dangers that occur of accidental innovation. We like innovation. We want people to take things and make it their own way, but it has to be imitated first before innovated. Otherwise, we're going to fall into these pitfalls. So the first thing we want to share with you is, how do you see yourself as a leader? Are you someone that is being intentional in how you multiply yourself? Are you someone that just accidentally is hoping for things to occur? And so what we say, the first step of this multiplying leadership is having the leader's mindset. Hey, everyone, can you share a little bit about this 100x leader mindset?
Yeah, the framework of our mind is so important. And, you know, we do a little bit of math, and when it comes to leadership, there are certain leaders who like to divide. They see pitting camps as a normal thing and saying, hey, you're us versus them is their mentality. And honestly, those type of leadership is not always great, because at the end of the day, you're dividing people. There's certain leaders who it's all about themselves. They want to just take from people. They want to subtract. What can I get from you? And that mentality also is not going to be sustainable. But most people, I would say, they're more in addition. They want to add value to people around. They have great intentions. They want to be supportive. But what we say is some leaders divide, others subtract, some add, but great leaders multiply. And what our hope is to have a mindset as here, leaders worth following are going to be people who are 100x. They're going to be wanting 100% health and great intent for other people. And they want to not just divide, subtract, or add, that they want to actually multiply. Because if you want to be able to be truly influential, impactful, and create a legacy, you need to think about multiplication as a leader.
Yeah, so if you look at this scale, and maybe depending on how you rate yourself, you might see some of the tendencies that come around. And if you had to look at yourself a little bit more critically and see what are the realities that you're facing, then maybe you can give yourself the score that is commensurate. So a little bit of a vulnerability test in the chat box. How would you rate yourself? And Abraham, can you share a little bit more about this 100x indicator and how people can maybe accurately see themselves the way other people see them?
Yeah, no, it's really just a subjective barometer for yourself in regards to where do you see yourself in the spectrum of the type of leader you are. And most people, if we kind of put a circle around it, most people are in that positive, 60 to 80 framework, and you may be more of an adding leader. But what we want to show you is that that's not enough, especially when it comes to the remote scenarios that we're actually living in. You got to think about how do you spread the weight of people? How do you get engagement? You can't just be carrying it all by yourself. We have to have a vision for multiplication altogether. But some of the questions that we want to ask is how healthy are you? And what are you multiplying? And are you able to multiply? Have you seen that as a pattern of your leadership? And so we kind of want to give you a spectrum from 0 to 100 and to give yourself a subjective score where you think you stand at that moment.
Yeah, so take a look at this slide and rate yourself. And we're going to put you in a little breakout room. And we'll have about 2 minutes to talk, and then we'll give you a 1-minute warning before you come back. But rate yourself. Talk about what score you gave yourself and why. And we want you to be honest, and hopefully it'll give you the ability to actually be intentional in your next steps so that you can actually be a leader that you want to be. So there you go. Let's see, Dave. It says it's not joined. Dave, you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hey, Jim. I'm
Hi.
having problems with my camera, so I can't turn it on right now.
No worries. I put you in a room. And then your partner is asking for help. Let me see if I could get you in that room. Hold on, okay?
All right.
I think everyone's in a room. Someone's moving people around. There you go. No, wait. It's 15 seconds left, unfortunately. You're on mute. It's a short question.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that was just by themselves.
It's okay.
Yeah, we might have to move a little bit faster, right?
Yeah. I'll go ahead and go to the multiplying leader slide, and in the chat box, if you could just ask people to share what they got.
Okay. Just continue to talk and we'll just have people just
Put their number in.
yeah.
The bulk of it's going to be 17. So I'm just going to go up to 17 through a narrative, and then we'll go back on 17 from the back and forth that we do. Does that make sense?
I think I'll see it when you do it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just letting you, I'll push through 17.
Yeah.
Basically.
Sounds good. If you can, start to share your personal rating in the chat room, kind of where you think you are.
And where'd you score yourself? And again, it's, there's no, we're not going to share this with your parents, so don't worry. They're not going to come out, attacking you. but typically, again, we see most people on this scale, right? 60 to 70, if they tend to find that their leadership isn't thriving and growing, that's typically what we find ourselves in. And so what we want you to see leadership really is each one of us has to be intentional if we're multiplying to become maybe a mentor, to be someone that is going to be apprenticing the people that are coming in. Now, the reality is not a lot of people coming in realize they're going to be an apprentice or they want to be a mentee, they want to contribute. But as leaders, maybe this is the structure that we need to start with and help them to manage their expectations and even tell that to them up front. And so if step one is becoming a multiplying leader, then step two would be is managing the time frame and the expectations for all the people that are coming in. And taking the time to onboard more intentionally with all the things that you have. And I know that's really tough because we have a full agenda of activities that are coming in. You know, Asian Leadership Month is coming up really quick, right? There's all these activities. People are reaching out to you to like want to collaborate and do things, NLA. And so reality is maybe you're oversubscribed. Right? It's okay to cut down. If you are not setting yourself up for success, then the reality is you become set up for failure. And so I shared this with you, right? Take what you're communicating with everybody else, avoid the pitfalls of danger by leading them to just innovate without even trying to, and lead them down this imitation path, this ability for them to allow them to be onboarded by you in an intentional way. That's going to help them to be for success. And what we're going to do is give you this little box here. And this box is helping you to understand what is the journey that everyone has to go through. There's a 4-step process when we go through this. And unfortunately, most people like to skip those green sides of the square. And we'll go through those details. But we find this is the most powerful tool in setting up your team for success by making sure that communication is calibrated and you really make sure you have a clear relationship with each other before you try to push for things. So Abraham, let's go through this 100X leadership process. Can you share with them what are some of the things that you found this square to be as part of your learning of what kind of a leader you were?
Yeah, I think it's so important to be able to have a roadmap of what you're taking your people through. Sometimes people don't know what does it look like to truly be mentored or taking them through a leadership development process. And it's so important to tell people where they stand with the process or the skill set or the role itself. If you're not clear in communicating where they stand with you, that's where a lot of the frustration actually occurs. The first process of that stage one, right on the top is IDU watch unconscious incompetence. This is the place where you say, hey, this is an area that I want to develop you in a role or a skill set. I want you to come follow me, right? And the reality is most people on the other side of that on the stage one, they're like, oh, they're romanticizing this whole opportunity. They're like, oh, this looks great. It's going to be fun. I can totally do this. But yet they're not aware they're incompetent of that role. And then they get to like, reality, they start to get consciously realizing they're incompetent. Basically, they start to realize they suck, right? And part of that, sometimes in that process, if you have a leader who actually helps them to understand their gaps, that consciousness will increase and be accelerated even quicker. However, there's times where leaders don't give them the right feedback loop, the right qualitative and quantitative feedback, and often they're not aware of the areas of their gap. And so it's very important to have the right cadence of rhythm of communication to be able to walk them through understanding the areas of where they need to grow in. But inevitably, guess what? They'll hit the pit of despair. And from there, what happens, every single person will feel at certain times, man, I'm not doing as well, right? I'm not as perfect as I think I am. And our journey as a leader is to take them out of there and to help them to get conscious competent, where they start to take a majority of it. And if they're intentional, they're starting to able to close the gaps of their incompetency. And the hope is they'll get to a place where they're going to be in cruise control, where they're on autopilot because they know their stuff now because they're unconsciously competent and they're running with it.
You know, the first stage, what most leaders tend to forget is that first green line on the right. And what we see is that people say, hey, I got this great idea. I want us to do this. And you describe something, and that's I'm doing something and people are watching. But then what happens is we just let them go on their own to do it. And what they don't get a chance to do is allow us to do it with them for a little bit, invite them into this process and get this relationship to build. And hey, Ron, what do you find when we don't really allow this first green leg to occur?
Yeah, there's a certain level of where they're confused when if you totally like let go of them and say nothing and there's like a vacuum of feedback, they're like, man, I thought I was in the third stage below here, but now all of a sudden you're coming back with all of this feedback. It's like, why didn't you tell me before? These were expectations that you had for me, right? Other times they're like, hey, like you just totally, gave me something and you didn't really help me to follow you, right? There was no modeling, there was no feedback, there was no template for me to walk in. And so there could be a sense of people falling in the pit of despair in that stage 2 if they're not really calibrated or given the right cadence of rhythm of connection.
And so like, this is where this opportunity for you to become not a micromanager because people are doing things wrong and not the way you expected it to be, but to really become a micro trainer, right? If you set that up where you're a micro trainer, no one really hates the fact that you're investing time with them and helping them to see the secret of your success. But if you're constantly critiquing them and nagging them because they're not doing things the way you want to, and they do something and you take it all apart and redo it, how do they feel? They're not going to feel like they're valued parts of the team, and they're going to like slowly slip away, and then they're not going to be there for you. And you're going to be wondering, why am I doing everything myself? But the reality is because you didn't take the time to demonstrate that. And so if you do this first step of micro training, and I like what Ben said, it's like, hey, let's do we. And the key part of the key part of we is that we're developing a relationship. You're learning to understand when I say green, I mean a forest green, not a lime green. When I say, let's make this big, it really means like, I'm talking about out of the world, not necessarily like, large. There's extra large and there's XXL large, right? Like that scaling of adjectives starts to become more collaborative because the reality is adjectives are subjective. When I say something, it means something different. And then what you allow yourself to do is move to that next stage of what I say is you do, I help. Like I'm going to let you maybe do 99% of it. I'm just there 1% of the time. Or you do 1% of it. I'm there 99% of the time. But the ownership transfers from my responsibility to your responsibility. I'm taking that hat that I'm wearing and giving it to you intentionally. And as Abraham talked about, it allows you to really strengthen that relationship they have with each other by going through that pit of despair. So Abraham, talk about a little bit this segment where we're moving from incompetency to competency and why this is so important.
I think it's so important to let your people know that you will feel a sense of pit of despair. And actually, it's part of your leadership role to actually tell them, I'm going to show you your gaps, and you're going to feel at times you don't have it all together. But the hope is that you're not going to hit the pavement, right? That you're going to hit a foam mattress of me being able to embrace you and support you in that process. But it's important to feel the weight of you kind of falling down at times, because that's when you grow, because that's when you start to see you've been given opportunities and you're able to see your gaps. And we, as leaders, we need to be able to make sure that they have those opportunities to feel this sense of healthy opportunity to feel that pit of despair without actually totally being destroyed. It is the responsibility of the leader to go down that ladder and to say, hey, are you doing okay? But also it's the responsibility of the direct report to actually, communicate, and they will feel safe to share those things. And to be able to just say, hey, this will be a natural process in any skill set or any role, will give them the sense of safety to be able to go there for you, right? And as leaders, we need to be able to tell them the mile marker, where they stand. I give this analogy in military boot camp. They call this the death run, where they have to run for 20 miles. There's studies that show that if you're like, hey, you're at the 3 mile mark. Hey, you're at the 5 mile mark. Hey, you're at the 7 mile mark. people actually finish the race. But when they actually don't give them a mile mark of where they stand before the leader and where they're at within the path, that's when they actually give up the most. And I think as leaders, we need to actually show them exactly where they stand and also ask them, where do you think you stand in this square, right? Is to be able to manage the expectation and to be in sync with where you stand with them and to help them to clean and clear those gaps is going to be where they're going to be fully become able to be consciously confident faster and quicker.
Yeah, and I like what Susan was sharing about the value of despair. And there was a great comment also with Milesh talking about managing our expectations. And as leaders, we need to manage our own expectations of our team so that they can manage their expectations of what we want from them. And that pit of despair, you can't avoid it. It's always there. And I think in the Asian culture, it's even more so, because that fear of failure is something that's so ingrained in us culturally that nobody wants to try to do something if they feel like they don't want to do it. So what you might feel like is if you're not giving them the warm feels that you'll be there when they fail, they might start just bailing out on you. Again, that's where you get left to hold everything by yourself. But here's some things that you can do to minimize that pit of despair. Expect it, give them the rope that you know they're going to hang themselves off, but you can't prevent it. So don't try to micromanage them. Like they don't know that they're going to be there, but let them see the harsh reality of how competent they are and how incompetent they are, and give them that time to do so. So 50% statistically, we like to have formal times or informal times. You got to have both. Abraham likes formal scheduling. I like informal scheduling. But if we don't do both, the people that we are leading will fail. We need to give them short-term vision and long-term vision. We need to tell them, hey, what are our next expectations for what they have? And when they complete the overall project, what are they going to see? One's inspirational and one becomes transformational. You have to be able to do both. And then we need to give them specific encouragement. I know a lot of us, especially people in California, like, that was awesome. It's amazing. Loved it. But then if we don't tell them specifically what we loved or how they did things, then they're like, I did a lot of things. I don't know which one was good, which one's bad. And they'll continue to do the bad and the good, or they'll self-select the bad to continue to do. And then they will like not do the good that you liked. That's just one of the things that you do to lead them to failure. And so a lot of times what we might feel like, hey, you got this, like, I'm going to do this. I want you to see what I'm going to do. And then you just only go halfway to where like, it seems like they got it. You know what? I think you got it. So Brian, I'll be over there. Just ask me if you got any questions. And Brian's sitting at his desk like, oh my gosh, that was a lot of information. I think I got it, but I don't know what I got. And you know what? Jim made it look so easy. I've never done this before, but I don't want to look stupid in front of Jim. I don't want to disappoint him. He's, like, I want to show my best. And so he's staring at that monitor. He doesn't know what questions to ask. He doesn't know where to begin. And he's trying to figure out himself. And we're put in that pit of despair a little longer than they need to be. And so our resolution to help you to become more intentional as you're fighting for your team and to really create realistic expectations, right? To avoid those danger zones is to really walk with them. Like, don't be the person that says, ask me any questions. You need to realize they don't know what questions to ask in order for them to go around this journey. So what we want you to do is take a look at this, maybe take a screenshot if you need to, but what side of the developing others tool do you struggle to spend enough time on? Think about it. We're going to break you out into another set of pairs. But think about what are those struggles that you have. And we want you to realize, maybe I need to spend a little bit more time doing it so that the people that I'm leading can feel empowered. Okay, so we got 3 minutes for you to be able to be self-diagnosing, and then be more intentional as you go through this to realize what is it that you can do to be able to be more intentional with the people that you lead. All right, so let me find the people. All right, we'll see you in 2.5 minutes. almost worked. Is it Sherry or Cherry? I want to say Cherry, but I feel like I'm set up for a trap. Sherry did not join. Let's see if there's another room I could throw her in. There she goes. Oh, she came back. Sherry? It's not working for her. I just put her in the waiting room. We've got 3 minutes. You're on mute. Sorry.
We have 3 minutes left, so actually maybe like 2 minutes when they come back. So looks like we have just do closing comments.
Yeah. So we'll just do the multiplying leader secret.
Yeah. And then when we do the Q&A at the end, just have that.
We'll do the Q&A while we have the NAP cohort in the background.
Yeah.
I didn't see any questions on the slides.
Mhm.
Coming back, I'll throw this up.
We'll have them report out which one do they want to focus a little bit more on.
I'll let you lead that part.
Okay. And then I'll dish it back to you
Yep.
at the end to wrap it up.
We started a little later than I thought we would have. That's okay.
If you
Welcome
can't
back.
start, welcome back. Right. I think we have the whole room now. You know, as we go into that pit of despair, you know, one thing that we need to commit to are the people that we work with as leaders is to say, hey, you will experience this, and I expect this, especially if this is a new to your role, it's a new position. Yeah, you may have done it in a different location, but this is different here, and there's always going to be different variables. And so let them know that this is going to be a normal thing, and say, as a leader, I'm going to make sure I'm going to be consistently meeting with you to make sure that you're not in that pit of despair. And if you are, it's okay. I'll spend more time with you, more vision with you, and more encouragement. Now, what I want you to think about here is this is the leadership secret here. If you can do this, if you can make sure, especially at the beginning, you have more rhythms of connection by doing these 3 things with them, you're going to find that they're going to be not in that pit of despair forever, and they're going to start to turn that corner and be a valuable leader within your organization that continues to carry the work of delegation that you give them. And so with that being said, I'd love to hear what are the specific thing that you're going to commit to elevating as a leader in light of the 3 things that you're going to start to do to be a better multiplying leader. All right. In the chat room, we'd love for you to all kind of name one little insight that you're going to be doing from this framework here that you're going to be elevating. Is it the time? Is it the vision? Is it an encouragement? What is that specifically? Love to hear on the chat room what you're going to commit to take away from our workshop.
And we're sorry we're run out of time. We do want to have Q&A. So if you have some questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to throw that in the chat box, or go ahead and unmute yourself to do so. While we do that, we did want to offer this program called the NAP cohort to y'all. We have about 4 different chapter board members that are on here, actually 4 different chapter boards and a few members from each that have joined it, and it's been helping them to become more aware of those tendencies and those realities that they face. And they've been using this as a way to help their leadership to be able to see what's going on and allow us to be your mentors through that process. It takes time to develop the tendencies we have, right? And our hope is that you could be a little bit more intentional in seeing those things that are blind spots, and with it, to be able to have some coaching along the way. And if you are a board member, reach out to us. We'll give you a promo code. We want to help you to make this something that is intentional with your group, and as well as thank you for the service that you do within NAP. So. But feel free, if you have any questions about our presentation so far, throw it in the chat box, or otherwise feel free to reach out and leave us some comments or questions on either. Mila?
Yeah, thank you, Abraham and Jim. I know we didn't have much time for questions, but that's all the time that we have for this session. Again, thank you, Abraham and Jim, for dedicating your time and providing value to us. Just a quick question, would you like to share where our audience can find you on social media?
Yes. Can give you our LinkedIn stuff.
And I've also typed in where you can find Abraham directly on his website, and Jim, his website as well. But thank you again. This session has concluded. And, for people who would like to move to the next session, please refer to the link that DM has just posted. But those who would like to stay back and ask questions to Jim and Abraham, please feel free to stay behind. But one of the questions Ben did ask is, how many opportunities do you provide a leader to engage before having to terminate their involvement because it may not be the right fit or sustainability or suitability, sorry?
Yeah, great question. To really understand where that comes from tends to be most leaders don't give great descriptions of roles and responsibilities or provide guidelines on what their expectations are upfront. And I think those difficult questions and actions can be prevented if you have that. So my recommendations to preventative medicine is always the best, to put those in the scope and have some good conversations. But I tend to say that if you can't move slow enough that somebody can follow, then that's probably a good time to have that deep conversation and apologize that you're unable to lead them in a pace that they're able to follow. You always, as a leader, need to take ownership of what you could have done better, and maybe give them some alternative roles and responsibilities that will allow them to succeed. And if it's not within that position, again, I don't know a lot of the details of what your situation is, but that would be my my overall response there.
Can I say something? Because we do have our next speaker we have to prepare for. So I love the questions coming in. You guys have the speaker's contact information. So right now, I don't want to kick you guys out, but we do have to prepare for our next speaker's presentation. So I'm going to put in the chat box the track so you guys can just take a look in there and then just head back to the main room.